We have an update on the Vince McMahon documentary that is being produced by Netflix. When could it come out? Who is being interviewed? And what it could possibly touch on. We have some insight on that. Before I tell you and fill you in on everything we know about this so far, be sure to hit that like button, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you get notified whenever a new video is released. Okay, so obviously Vince McMahon has been at the top of the wrestling world for nearly half of his entire life. Since the 1980s, this is the man that has dominated North American professional wrestling. And with that comes a legacy that you would think by now would have been chronicled in a documentary. And nothing major to that extent has really ever been produced. There's been exposés, there's been, the dark side of the ring about the steroid trial and different instances about his life, but never one about the man himself, Vince. But that seems to be changing. We knew that executive producer Bill Simmons, you might know him from The Ringer, he is helping produce a documentary about Vince McMahon for Netflix. And we have an update on when that could be released. Simmons said that the documentary is expected to come out in early 2024. And Dave Meltzer of the Wrestling Observer newsletter actually chimed in and said the following on his show, saying, quote, "Today I went to Los Angeles to do a Netflix taping about Vince McMahon. I guess what I can say, because I'm not supposed to say much about it, is the Netflix series, so it is a series, is going to be out sooner than you think. I guess that's the best way to put it. I'll know the date. I'll be able to release the date pretty soon, but it is soon." So we know that, and Meltzer even went on to say that one of the people that they have apparently interviewed for this documentary is Vince McMahon. So things are about to get very interesting. Obviously, for the past year, 2 years, one of the biggest stories in professional wrestling has not only been the sale of WWE, but also the ousting and downfall, if you can call it that, of Vince McMahon. Because we have heard about these hush money payments. We know that there have been allegations made against Vince McMahon, even going back to Rita Chatterton in the 1980s, a former WWF official who accused Vince McMahon of forcing himself on her. And you would assume that with this series, with Netflix, producing some of the things that they have that have really gone into detail and the nitty gritty and some of the not so great details about people's lives, you would think that these topics would at least be discussed. And, I'm of two minds about it in that the right thing to do would be to point blank get Vince McMahon's direct answer to all of these allegations. I'm not just talking about the hush money payments. I'm talking about the Chatterton allegations in the 80s. I'm talking about allegations and reports that came out about former WWF and WWE divas and female talent, who were subjected allegedly to terrible things by Vince McMahon. And you would think that if this is a serious documentary, those things would come up and Vince would be forced to in some way answer for them, because God knows he's not going to answer for them in the real world. Like he's rich and powerful enough to avoid any of those questions. But if we look at like Netflix's track record with documentaries, right, there's like one side of it which is like the true crime that chronicles things that happen that are very at times controversial because they talk about topics that people don't really bring up, or they shine a different light on things. However, what we've seen recently, especially in the sports documentaries they've made, if you go back to the Johnny Manziel documentary they made or the Untold Florida Gators edition, you could say after having watched those that some of those were just kind of like PR things for people like Urban Meyer and Johnny Manziel to try to boost their, stature and boost them back into relevancy, especially with Urban Meyer, who himself was obviously not accused of of the things that Vince McMahon was accused of in any way, but he was not a great coach, and had some he also had some baggage that came along with him, right? But that what that documentary showed, it didn't really show you that side of Urban Meyer. It just showed you, this is Urban the winner. So it's going to be interesting to see what this is. It's going to be interesting to see how this is handled. One thing that we do know is that, Bill Simmons seemingly, again, I'm not sure what it is, but from the outside looking in and with the media coverage and the way he talks about it, he seems to have a pretty friendly relationship with WWE. And if he is producing this and he's one of the people that's in charge of this, hard for me to see, him potentially risking and pissing off WWE, for lack of a better term, in order to cover this story in the way that it should be. And again, we'll see what ends up happening. It looks like it's gonna happen. It's coming out soon. It looks like this is gonna be like a Q1 2024 release. That's at least the indication that we're getting from all this hoopla and hullabaloo that's coming out about it. But it's gonna be interesting because again, it's also a series, so we've never seen like this covered in an in-depth way. One thing that I am hopeful for though is that at the minimum, right, we're not going to get the watered down WWE version of all of these events. Like, you're gonna have Vince McMahon, spinning his yarns that he usually does. But usually when we hear about Vince McMahon or we hear about, WWE in the 1980s and 1990s, they're always positioned as the good guys. They're always positioned as the good guys or, the protagonist, and like everyone else is a heel, right? AWA was a heel, WCW were heels, NWA were heels. When in reality, like, these are all just companies competing against each other. And I think that, this is like going to be a good, not test, but it's going to be a good, I guess it is going to be a good test in a way now that I think about it, to see like how much research the filmmakers are actually going to put into this, because a lot of the stuff, like the WWE propaganda, for lack of a better term, that we get, it's like that Vince McMahon, he had to buy out the territories, or Vince McMahon saved professional wrestling in the 1980s, and all this crap, right, that we've heard from WWE for years that just is not true. It's like fundamentally not true, like, but it's what we're used to hearing. WWE for the longest time was the only voice around, and they were the only ones making documentaries. They were the ones who owned a lot of the tape library, so they're the ones who got to control the narrative. It's going to be interesting to see what that narrative looks like and what it is without the WWE banner and without the WWE approvals process and all that. So we'll see. But it's going to be interesting. I'll definitely check it out and watch. But new Netflix documentary about Vince McMahon seemingly releasing soon. Let me know what you guys think about this in the comment section below. What do you want to hear discussed in the documentary? What are your thoughts on the actual substance of the documentary? Do you think it will be substantive? Let me know in the comment section. Also, be sure to hit that like button, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you get notified whenever a new video is released.